friends, please pray with me. O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. You are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So the story of the Transfiguration is kind of a weird story. We know that. It happens every year, and every year we go, what do we do with this? And in truth, most theologians and biblical scholars don't have a clear or single-minded answer about it. But what we do know is this, is that the Transfiguration represents an in-between space, a place of liminality. It's just on a threshold between what has been with Epiphany and looking to what is coming with the season of Lent. Another way to think about the Transfiguration is that it is a metamorphosis. And on this threshold into the space of transformation, in Luke's story at least, the way that Luke tells it, is that the clouds roll in. And the clouds roll in response, it seems, as the way a story is told, to something that is happening in the moment. And that something that is happening is Peter. Peter, beloved Peter, the complicated and perplexed sometimes disciple, interrupts the moment of majesty and says, "Let me do something here. Let me insert myself and make it bigger and better, make it more." He says, "Let me build you tents, all three of you, Jesus and Elijah and Moses." And the clouds come in, and the voice of God speaks in the clouds and basically says, "Peter, stop. Be quiet. Just stop. This is my chosen one. Listen to him. And for once, Peter, let the mystery be. Take it in. This is a moment. This is a stop along the way. It is not the resting place. It cannot be captured. It cannot be sheltered or bottled up or commercialized or commodified. It can only be experienced. The Transfiguration can mean so many things. There are so many layers to this and many, many sermons that could be preached about it. But to me this year, what feels true is that the Transfiguration is a reminder to remember our smallness, our humanness, our limits. And it may seem strange to hear me say, remember your smallness, because we talk so much about our inherent self-worth, which is indeed true, that we are, in fact, all made in the image of God, that we are indeed deeply loved and have immeasurable value simply because of our existence. And yes, that is true of everyone. Yes, and feel your smallness. I, for one, take great comfort in this reminder of our smallness, especially in this time, of my smallness, my humanity and my finiteness. Because in truth, when this truth seeps in, my nervous system comes down a notch. My psyche exhales. Because what it really means is that it isn't all up to me. If I'm not my best self in any given moment, and certainly I am not, or any given season, then it will not thwart God's good work in this world. Feeling all the pressure can cause us to constrict, and when we constrict, we tighten, and our sight grows narrow, and we fail to indeed see how God is already here and already at work. Friends, it seems to me, and probably to you, that almost everyone we know is on edge these days, and rightly so, rightly so. The BBC reporter John Simpson said recently that there are years when the world goes through some fundamental, convulsive change, a time when the basic assumptions about the way our world works are fed into the shredder. And he then goes on to suggest that even in its short tenure, that 2025 is one of those years. Indeed, much of what we have assumed was solid and unshakable is in fact crumbling all around us. And it would be weird, in fact, quite concerning, if we weren't worried about it. But what we do often in times of extreme fear and stress is to put extra pressure on ourselves and others to control what we can and what we can get right. It's a little bit like, please let me control to the hilt anything that is within my control or that I think is within my control, because so much is out of my control. My children are good teachers of this quite often. If you've witnessed children's time when the children actually come and sit up here on the floor, and the amazing time that Katie does with facilitating this, then you likely have seen my son, who at 6 years old is always in motion. So you can imagine that getting him out the door for anything that has a schedule is challenging. And I get stressed about time. I get stressed about being places when people expect me to be there, or my children being at places when people expect them to be there. And many mornings, while his sisters have put on their socks and shoes, even the 2-year-old, he has wandered off to build Legos or has transformed, unbeknownst to me, into some animal that he's made up. Whatever it is, suffice it to say, he is not putting on his socks and shoes. Recently, when this was happening, in fact, just a few days ago, I kind of just gave up. I just gave up. And the thought that came to me in a really defeating kind of way was, I just can't be the best mom today. I just can't. Today, I cannot thread the needle of patience and practicality. And it felt a little bit like a collapse, a defeat. And I did indeed feel defeated and deflated at first. And then something happened. I had no idea it was going to happen, but the pressure lifted inside of my chest, and it seemed to lift from the room too. And I realized, of course, that the pressure I was feeling inside myself, my son also felt, because whether I knew it or not, I was putting it on him. And it was filling the room with this kind of constricted and anxious energy. And when I just sort of threw my hands up and decided I wasn't going to try so hard anymore, even though it felt negative, it caused us all to breathe and relax a bit. And I don't know how else to say it, but suddenly it wasn't all so serious to me anymore. It meant I could just be with my son as I was and as he was. And there was more connection and more presence and resonance between us because in letting go of some idea of what it meant for me to be the best mom in that moment, I could become, at least for a little while, a real mom with all of my flaws. And he could more easily just be a real kid. And there was an ease between us. And isn't that what we both wanted really all along? And we did indeed eventually get out the door. It may seem silly, but this to me was a reminder of my smallness. A moment through socks and shoes and kids being kids, that in my little life, God broke in and said, just stop. Let it go. Open your hands. This too can be a metamorphosis. When we relax into our imperfect selves and give up on getting it all right, we can find the freedom and the ease to do the hard things without becoming hard ourselves. The world does not need more hardness and rigidity right now, and neither do we. This is a time indeed to stay soft in our hearts and soft in our relationships. Because if we are going to be uncompromising about anything, if we're going to be rigid about anything, then let it be about strengthening our resolve to stand against what is evil in this world. And there is much that we are confronting with a holy resoluteness. Don't lose yourself in trying to fight against the night. Don't think that you are alone. Let it all just make you more human, more real, more alive, more awake. It wasn't just Jesus that was changed in the transfiguration. Certainly the friends that were with him were changed too. And may it be so in our own metamorphosis. Amen.